My impetus came from being a teenager. I formed a band. I really desperately wanted to be the most creative band ever. I wanted to write the most amazing original music ever, and it just didn't work. And even though I came up with some good ideas, I just didn't understand why. So I sort of transitioned into my academic career, and I started asking the question of what is creativity and how, fundamentally, how could I become more creative? And I started becoming obsessed with creativity itself. So I'm going to ask 3 questions today. Firstly, how important is creativity? Okay. We all know it's of some importance, but how important is it? Secondly, what is creativity from a scientific perspective? And thirdly, can you learn to become more creative? Now, the World Economic Forum has said that by 2020, creativity is going to be the 3rd most important skill in the entire world of work. That's up from 10th place in 2015. Obviously, the advance of AI is really having an impact on people's, the kinds of skills that you're going to need to prosper in today's world. But I'm going to look at an even bigger picture than that and say that creativity actually made us human. So anthropologists and archaeologists like me refer to a unique event in prehistory. It's called the creative explosion. It's also referred to as the human revolution, the Great Leap Forward. Happened probably about 100,000 years ago. All of the things that we associate with humanity, all of the things that we take for granted, consciousness, art, complex tool creation and use, language, all of those things, they arose around about the same time in Africa, and it was this ability, this creative faculty that then enabled us to colonize the globe within just a few thousand years, which is an incredibly small amount of time in evolutionary terms. But it didn't stop there. Throughout all of history, all of the significant movements you can think of, all of the social changes that you can think of, were driven by creativity, from the origins of agriculture to the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and then the invention of science in ancient Greece. Then later, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, and more recently, the space age and the information age. So let's look at what that means. What is creativity from a scientific perspective? The first thing to understand is that while creativity is certainly a very subjective thing, you know, there's a sense of opinions about, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to creative ideas. Somebody might find it creative, somebody might not. So there's a subjective element to it. But there is a biological reality, and we're finding more and more, year by year, more research is finding biochemical markers in the brain that tell us that this is associated with a creative idea. So MRI scanning, EEG scanning, this kind of thing, while people are actually doing creative tasks in the lab, is telling us what happens in the brain when people are being creative. The first thing, which has been found consistently for many years, is that a relaxed brain is a creative brain. Slow alpha waves coursing through the brain is associated with coming up with creative ideas, which is one of the reasons probably why brainstorming has been found consistently to not work. Because in a brainstorming session, you're very animated, you're surrounded by people. Clearly that can work, but it turns out that people who are coming up with ideas on their own tend to come up with more ideas and better ideas than in a brainstorming group.
So let's talk for just a second. I often get asked about AI and machines' effect on creativity. What is your particular point of view, looking through the lens of what you've just presented? How should the folks in the audience and me up here on stage, how should we, give us a framework for how to think relationally between creativity and machines?
I mean, I would say that machines are able to do things that the human brain is not able to do in terms of intelligence and knowledge. So even it was over 20 years ago now that Deep Blue 2 beat Garry Kasparov in a chess match, right? And imagine what, you know, a computer would do to Magnus Carlsen today, just wipe the floor with them probably. You know, AI can pass, can score higher than average on IQ tests. Okay, AI is very intelligent, but its ability to think of creative ideas is extremely limited. One of the areas it seems to be able to do it best is in music. I think that's because music has lots of mathematical properties.
Math,
yeah, exactly. Recently, there was a work of art created by a program that sold for $450,000 or something.
Yes.
But as you were saying last night, it's actually somebody's had to actually design the inputs into that. So, let's see AI just inventing a new art form. How about that? Or how about the idea of art? I mean, when I refer to the creative explosion 100,000 years ago, somebody thought of the idea of art per se. Now, that is a creative idea. AI is just responding to the inputs, and maybe it's also been able to write sort of strange little surreal fairy tales. But again, you've got to tell it what to do. Let's see that evolve naturally from it. So for me, we're a long, long way away from AI being able to do creativity, and that's why creativity is the thing that you can have as your kind of as your killer skill. Because I mean, AI may never be able to do creativity fully. Margaret Bowden, who's a prominent creativity scientist, she said that the reason is that computers can't really understand context in order to understand judgment. And actually, the way I would put it is, computers can think of valuable ideas, I suppose. They can do valuable things and useful things, clearly. They can think of new ideas by just, let's say, combining things. Can machines think counterintuitively? Well, the only way that you could do that is to understand what would be expected in any given situation or scenario. So that requires much more. That's about life. We know that this is counterintuitive because we do this anyway, but a computer would have to know that in the first place. So for me, we're a long, long way away from that. And that's why the more creative you can be, the more you don't have to worry about losing your job to a machine.